The Veilcos had a word for planets like Thessaly 6, Dorith, and it translated roughly as a fruit left too long on the vine, overripe, undefended, already half surrendered to gravity and time. Their cartographers had sort of flagged it 14 cycles ago. A human settlement on the outer fringe of the Arethusa cluster. Low population density, which no military garrison. Atmosphere processors running at 40% efficiency. Power actually grid flickering on orbital scans like a dying candle. Fleet Commander Orith Sewell looked at the scan readout and felt something close to boredom. Life signs. Approximately 4,000.
Power actually grid flickering on orbital scans like a dying
age
candle.
Signatures are a pause, which was unusual for Yelnset, who processed data to the way rivers process water. Commander, the age signatures are
all
anomalous.
systems green, ready to launch.
Anomalous how?
Confirmed. Navigation is
Yelnset
locked.
turned
Engage
two of
primary
his four
thrusters
eyes
on my mark.
toward Orith.
All
the other
human
two
age
stayed
signatures
fixed on
are
screen, which was habit, and also deeply unsettling to anyone
Target
who
locked.
didn't know it.
Enemy inbound.
The mean biological
all units
age
engage on my
reads
mark.
at approximately 81 of their standard
The age
years,
signatures are
with
anomalous.
significant clustering
Anomalous how?
above 90.
Yelnset turned two
Silence
of
on
his
the
four
bridge.
eyes toward.
Then, behind Orith, someone laughed.
Deployed interceptor
Not
flexing
loud,
with you.
just a low,
We can't afford
in my
any for
opinion,
any red
rolling
gold
sound, the
stains.
kind that spreads. Orith let it. He almost joined it. Humans aged hard. Everyone, I think, in the
The mean
Dominion
biological
knew this.
age reads at
Plus,
approximately
their bodies
81 of their
deteriorated in
standard
ways that
years,
seemed
with
almost theatrical.
significant
Joints
clustering
failed.
above 90.
Memory frail.
Silence on the bridge!
biochemical degradation they called aging happened visibly, relentlessly, as though the species had never quite negotiated a truce with time. The human at 90 was
Just forward,
like every
right, south,
physiological
face, up,
index
back!
the Dominion used.
Why?
Fragile
Oreth let
architecture.
it. He almost
Slow,
joined it.
dependent on medication and mobility assistance. Plus,
Hostiles on approach bearing 270.
on a colony that looked
Countermeasures
like someone had
active,
forgotten
engaging
finished
now.
Thessaly.
Plus,
6
their
had no
bodies
strategic
deteriorated
value.
in ways that
It sat on
seemed
no
almost
resource corridor.
theatrical.
It produced
Joints
no
failed.
TBH
Listen to me.
weapons,
We don't
no
have
war
much time.
materials,
The situation is
nothing
dire.
Dominion needed.
We must act
But
now.
it sat in the
Do you
corridor
understand?
they need to occupy on the push toward the Arethusa Gate. And occupying it would send a message to the Human Confederation fleet still scrambling 2 systems over. We won't skip anything, which we will take everything. Even
Plus
the things
4,000
TBH
of them.
you think we didn't bother with. Prepare the landing force, Orith said. Standard pacification protocol. I want it clean. He didn't say easy. He was too disciplined for that. He thought it, though. On Thessaly 6, the morning announcement played at 0700 the way it always
It produced
did.
no weapons,
A cheerful
no
chime,
war materials,
which a recorded
nothing
voice,
the Dominion needed.
warm, female, unhurried,
And occupying it would
reminding
send a
residents
message
about
to the
day's
Human
schedule.
Confederation fleet still
Hydrotherapy
scrambling
at
too.
0900 in the east.
We won't skip
Plus,
anything, which
Dr.
we will
Fenway's
take
cardiology
everything.
follow-ups running in medical Bay 3. The Community Gardens tomato
Even the
harvest
things
is today.
you think we wouldn't bother
Volunteers
with.
needed. Evening film for what it's worth. Screening. Casablanca, original 2D print, restored. Dinner service begins at 17:30. Edna Vasquez
I
was
want it
already
clean.
awake. Plus,
He didn't
she was
say
always already
easy.
awake. When you hit 83, sleep became a thing you visited rather than a place you lived. She was sitting on her porch. A real porch, wood-painted white, slightly
I've got this
warped from
one
the
ready
humidity,
for replanting.
Drinking coffee.
Great, the
and
hole is almost ready
watching
here.
the sun come up over the red clay hills.
Volunteers are
The coffee
signing up
was
across
terrible.
the city.
The colony supply ship was 3 weeks late, and they were down to the reconstituted
Reminding
stuff
residents
that
about the
tasted like
day's
someone
schedule.
had described coffee to a machine, and the machine had done its best.
Hydrotherapy
To be
at
fair,
0900
she
in
drank
the
it
East
anyway.
Wing.
Some habits didn't care about quality. Her tablet pinged. She looked at it. Plus, the message was from the colony's defense network, an automated system that
The
mostly
Community
sent
Gardens
alerts
tomato
about
harvest is
storms
today.
and
Volunteers needed.
wildlife
Evening
near
film
the
for what it's
perimeter.
okay.
She'd been on the installation committee that
Worth
set it up
screening.
11 years
Casablanca,
ago, back
original
when she
2D
and
print,
Franklin were
restored.
first assigned to Thessaly. Franklin was gone now, and 3 years. She read the alert. Then, she, for what it's worth, read it again.
Edna Vasquez was
Veilcos,
already awake.
approach vector consistent with invasion fleet. Estimated landing in 4 hours.
Plus, she was always
She
already
set down
awake.
the terrible coffee. Well, she said to no one. All right then. The colony administrator, a man named Beaumont Achebe, 78, 2 replaced hips, a pacemaker. That beeped faintly when he moved too fast. Called an emergency assembly in the Central Commons at 0730. 412 people showed up. The rest were either in the
Hills.
medical wing,
The coffee was
unable to
terrible.
ambulate without assistance, or had already heard and
The
were doing
colony's
something
supply
else.
ship was 3
Beaumont
weeks
stood
late.
at the front with his cane hooked over his arm and his reading glasses pushed up on his
Target
forehead
confirmed. Moving
the
to
way they
engage.
always were when he
Copy
was
that.
thinking
Ready
hard.
on your mark.
Here's what
Mark,
we TBH
go!
know, he said,
Machine
and told
and the
them.
machine
No
had done
evacuation, which the closest Confederation vessel was 6 hours out.
To
The
be
Vale
fair,
Cost
she
would
drank it
land in
anyway.
4. Plus, the colony had no military garrison, no orbital defense array, no shield generators worth the name. What it had was a community armory,
She
installed as
looked at
part of the
it.
Outer Colony Safety Act, 12 years back, stocked with 240 service rifles,
Plus,
40 sidearms,
the message was
a
from the
surface-to-air
colony's
battery
defense
with
network,
11
an
functional
automated
missiles,
system that mostly
and
sent
enough explosive ordnance to make a geologist nervous. What it had was 4,000 people who had, between them,
Committee
lived
that
through
set it
almost
up
everything.
11 years ago.
I'm not going to tell anyone what to do, Beaumont said. Medical wing residents are being moved to the deep shelters in Sector 7. Anyone who honestly wants to go with them should go.
Franklin
No
was
shame
gone
in that,
now,
which
in 3
none.
years.
He looked out at the crowd. Edna Vasquez was in the third row with her arms crossed. Next to her was Corporal retired Deung Park, 91, who'd fought at Kepler Station before most of the people in this
Then
room
she,
were
for
born,
what it's worth,
and who was
read
wearing
it
his
again.
old uniform shirt, a little loose now across the shoulders.
Vial
metal still
costs,
straight.
approach vector
Behind
consistent
them,
with
Marcelina
invasion
Babai,
fleet.
87, who'd spent 40 years as a demolitions engineer for the Terran Mining Consortium, who had once famously brought down a
She set
collapsing
down
orbital
the terrible
platform with
coffee.
nothing but a bypass cable and a very bad attitude. Beaumont waited.
Well, she
Nobody
said to
moved
no one.
toward
All right,
the
then.
shelters.
The
He put his
colony
glasses
administrator.
on. Then, let's get to work. The Vale
A man
Cost
named
landing force
Beaumont
came
Achibi,
down in
78,
3 waves.
2 replaced hips,
200
a
soldiers
pacemaker.
in the first wave. Heavy armor.
Move up!
pulse
Stay
weapon.
frosty!
They
Copy
landed
that.
at the
Eyes on
colony's
the ridge.
main gate
Sector
in the early
clear. Pushing.
afternoon,
Roger. Hold
under
formation.
a sky the color of old
412
copper,
people showed
dust
up.
kicking up around their drop pods like something biblical. Fleet Commander TBH
The
Orith
rest were
watched
either
from
in the
orbit,
medical wing,
and the colony was
unable
silent.
to ambulate
No
without
defensive emplacements
assistance.
detected. Yeln
Or
several.
had already heard
No
and were
energy
doing something
signatures
else.
consistent with weapon systems. I'm reading. Movement inside
Moving
the
to
structures.
objective. Stay
but
frosty.
passive.
Copy. On your
They're
6.
hiding, someone said. I guess. Orith
His
didn't
forehead,
respond.
the way they
He
always
watched.
were when
the
he was
landing force
thinking
captain,
hard.
a subcommander named Thress, opened a channel.
Here's what we
Basically,
know, he said,
standard
and
surrender
told them.
protocol. The Dominion wasn't without its rituals. You announced.
No
you gave them a
evacuation.
chance to kneel.
The closest
you know,
Confederation
residents
vessel
of
is 6
Thessaly
hours
6. By order of the Vale Cost
The
Dominion,
Vale Cost would
this
land
colony
in 4.
is hereby claimed. Lay down any weapons. Assemble in the Central Commons. Compliance will be rewarded with processing efficiency. Produce processing efficiency. That was the
No
phrase.
shield generators
It
worth
meant
the name.
The transition to occupied status would happen faster, and
What it
with
had
less
was a
physical
community
trauma
armory
if they
installed
cooperated.
as part of
It
the
was
Outer Colony
technically a
Safety
mercy
Act.
silence. Then Beaumont Achebi's voice came over the colony-wide comms, and Orith heard it from orbit through the translation filter. And for a moment, the translation filter was what confused him. Because humans speaking under
And enough
stress
explosive
had a cadence
ordnance
that
to
the
make a
filter
geologist
sometimes
nervous.
struggled with a compressed, flat effect that the Dominion
What it
linguists
had
called
was
terminal
4,000
pragmatism,
people who had,
and which
between
older
them,
xenoanthropologists
lived through
called
almost
simply
everything.
a voice that hasn't thing left to lose.
I'm not going to tell
This is
anyone
Administrator
what
Beaumont
to do.
Achebi of Thessaly Colony. We've heard your offer. We've discussed it. A pause. No. Deung Park was lying flat on the roof of the colony's water treatment facility, which was the highest point in the settlement with a clean line of sight to the main gate, which was why he'd picked it 40 minutes ago. Sort of his knees hated him. They've been hating him for 20 years. He'd learned to ignore it the way you learn to ignore a neighbor's dog. Always barking, never actually
Next to
doing
her
anything.
was Corporal
He had the
Dae-Jung
surface-mounted
Park,
targeting scope
91.
synced to his tablet. His fingers were steady. They'd
Who'd
always
fought
been steady,
at Kepler
which some
Station
things don't
before
go.
most of the
first
people in
wave,
this
like,
room
was
were
moving
born.
in formation toward the gate. Standard Vale Cost assault pattern. He'd studied their recorded engagements on the way out here 11 years ago when the border skirmishes started. The colony's safety committee had gotten serious about threat assessment.
Who'd
He
spent
made
40
Edna
years
sit
as a demolitions
through
engineer
6 hours
for
of
the Terran
tactical
Mining
footage.
Consortium.
She'd made him sit through the tomato harvest afterward. He thought about that. He put his to be fair eye to the scope. First unit is at the gate, he said into his earpiece. Marceline, you ready? From somewhere under the main street. Born ready, honey. Edna,
Nobody moved toward
from
the
the East
shelters.
Ridge. Waiting on you. Beaumont, a pause. The sound of a cane on gravel, which unfortunately,
He put his
yes,
glasses on.
Dae-Jung watched the gate. The Vale Cost soldiers moved
Then let's
through
get
it
to
in a
work.
column.
The
He
Vale
pressed the
Cost
trigger
landing
on the
force came
surface-to-air
down
battery
in 3
controller.
waves.
3 missiles. not at the soldiers.
200 soldiers in the
TBH
first wave.
At soldiers in open formation were wasteful. Marceline had explained this at
Heavy
length,
armor.
using language
pulse
that had made the
weaponry.
younger colonists visibly uncomfortable. The missiles hit the two flanking drop pods still sitting on the landing field. Honestly, the explosions were enormous. The second thing that happened, half a second later, in the confusion and the smoke, was that the charges Marceline had been planting under the main approach road for the past 3 hours detonated in sequence. Not simultaneously,
defensive emplacements
sequentially,
detected.
which meant the column didn't get hit all at once, which meant the chaos was directional, which meant the soldiers in the column were pushed inward toward each other rather than outward toward cover. Marceline had designed the sequencing on a tablet in about 40 minutes, which was, she would later say,
Guess Orith didn't
slower than
respond.
usual, because her reading glasses kept fogging up. From orbit, Orith
The
watched
landing
his
force
landing forces
captain, a
formation
sub-commander
collapse.
named Thress,
What
opened
commander?
a channel.
Yeln set, both sets of eyes on the screen.
Basically,
now.
standard
The
surrender
colony
protocol.
they're firing from multiple vectors. I'm counting 8, no, 12 distinct
Hostiles
positions,
inbound,
which
weapons
the
hot.
charges under the roadway
Drones are
were.
swarming, fall
Commander,
back.
the placement pattern on those
You
charges
gave them the
is a
chance
pause
to
that
kneel.
wasn't data processing hesitation. A pause that was something else. This is professional
You know,
ordnance
residents
work.
of Thessaly
Send the
6.
second wave. Commander, send the second wave. The second wave came down harder. Suppression fire before they even hit the ground, sweeping the ridge lines, the rooftops,
Hold
burning
position.
the red
Wait
clay
for my mark.
and the glass.
Air support is
Edna
in
was
position.
already
Copy,
gone from the
standing
East
by.
Ridge.
Incoming,
She hadn't stayed on the East Ridge, which she had fired twice from the East Ridge to establish the position. Then she'd left, and she was
That was the
already
phrase.
inside the colony's service tunnel system, which she'd helped design 11 years ago, which connected every major structure underground, which the Veilcos hadn't scanned because service tunnels read on their sensors as infrastructure rather than defensive architecture. A mistake. Plus, she moved, through the dark without a flashlight. She knew every turn. She'd been walking this tunnel for a decade.
Through the
every
translation
morning because it was the
filter,
best way to get
and for a moment the translation
east
filter was
residential
what
wing
confused
to the
him.
garden without dealing with the hill, and the hill wasn't her friend anymore. Her TBH, knees, it turned out,
The
were in better
compressed
shape
flat
than Day
affect
Young's.
that the Dominion
She,
linguists called
came up through the
terminal
access hatch
pragmatism.
behind the colony's medical storage bay. Currently empty,
Xenoanthropologists
all
called
patients
simply
moved to
a
Sector
voice
7
that has nothing
shelters,
left to
and
lose.
she had the corridor to herself.
I
and
never thought I'd
a
see
very
you
clear
again.
shot at the
You
3
shouldn't be here.
Veilcos soldiers who had
I
just
had
come
to
through the
see
medical
you.
bay's main entrance and were sweeping the room in the confident, unhurried way of soldiers who don't expect resistance from a direction that isn't in front of them. In the Dominion tactical record, the Battle of Thessaly, 6 lasted 6 hours and 41 minutes. The Veilcos committed 3 waves, totaling 600 soldiers. They lost
wind carries
212
memories.
of them.
So
They didn't
much
take
has
the colony.
changed.
Orith sat pretty much on his bridge and read the reports as they came in. For the first time in 11 campaigns,
Which was why he
11,
picked it 40
he felt
minutes
something
ago.
he didn't have a clean word for in his language. Dominion didn't have a good vocabulary for the
Sort of his
experience
knees
of
hated
expecting
him.
a fruit that had fallen from a vine and finding, instead, something thorny.
So much has
The
changed.
colony's defenders
yet
were
so much
using
the same.
mining equipment as improvised artillery.
Neighbor's
They were
dog,
rigging
always
medical
barking,
supply
never
drones
actually
as
doing anything.
reconnaissance assets. They had somehow, his
He had the
tactical officer was
surface-mounted
still
targeting
trying to
scope synced
reconstruct
to his
how
tablet.
collapsed the half-built maintenance structure onto the flank of his second wave
Squad, advance to the ridge.
using
Drones,
what the
provide cover fire.
post-analysis
Copy
would
that,
eventually
moving out.
identify as a controlled
They'd
demolition
always been
sequence
steady, which
executed
some
by a
things
woman
don't go.
whose hand was shaking badly enough that the detonator caps had to be crimped 3
The first
times
wave was
before they
moving in
seated properly.
formation toward
Her
the
hand
gate.
shook, and she crimped them 3 times. She pressed the button. The building came down exactly where she wanted it. "Give me a channel to their administrator," Orith said. Beaumont answered the comm from inside Sector 7, sitting on a supply crate
He'd
because
made
the
Edna
chairs were
sit
all
through
taken.
6
His
hours of
pacemaker
tactical
beeping
footage.
steadily in the silence. He basically was bleeding
She'd
from a
made
cut
him
above
sit
his
through the
ear where
tomato
fragment had
harvest
caught him.
afterward.
And someone had wrapped it badly with whatever was available. And
thought about
he looked
that.
like what he was, a 78-year-old man who had spent 6 hours in a crisis and still hadn't left. Administrator Achevi. Orith's voice through the translator, flatter than his actual cadence. "I wish to understand something. Ask. Your colony has no military personnel.
Marceline, you
no
ready?
garrison. No standing
ready.
defense forces. Our intelligence was thorough. Your intelligence wasn't wrong. And yet, Beaumont was quiet for a moment. He looked across the shelter at the
The
faces
sound of a
around him.
cane on gravel,
Marceline
which
with her hands
unfortunately,
wrapped
yes,
in burn dressing.
Dae-jung
Dae-jung
watched the
asleep
gate.
upright against the wall.
The veiled
Oxygen
crossed
mask
soldiers
around his
moved
neck.
through it in
the
a
metal
column.
still straight. Edna sitting cross-legged on the floor.
He pressed the
eating
trigger on
something
the
out of a
surface-to-air
foil
battery
packet with
controller.
focused attention of someone who had decided that this
Not at the
moment
soldiers.
required nutrition, and therefore nutrition would occur. Commander, Beaumont said.
The readings are spiking.
How old is your
What is that
civilization?
signal?
A pause.
I have to report this.
Approximately pretty much for thousands
We have to
standard
go.
years of
Now.
recorded military
What is it?
history.
No time, just
MM,
follow her.
Beaumont
This way,
adjusted his
stay close.
glasses. We've
Using
been at war
language that had made the
somewhere
younger
for
colonists
most of our
visibly
existence,
uncomfortable.
long before we had anything worth calling
The
civilization.
missiles hit the
We
two
have been
flanking
surviving
drop
things
pods
that should
still
have
sitting
killed
on the
us for
landing
so
field.
long that it stopped being skill. It became a search for the word. Architecture. It's built into how we live. Your soldiers,
In the
Asterisks,
smoke.
weren't soldiers.
Was that the charges
Beaumont, let
Marceline
that
had been
sit.
planting under
That
the
woman
main
who
approach
dropped the
road
building
for?
on your armor unit? She's
Status
87,
report now.
which
The
spent
core's
her career
destabilizing.
in mining.
Reroute power to
She knows
stabilizers
how
and
structures
prepare for
fail
emergency
because
protocol.
she's been thinking
Which
about
meant the
it since
column didn't
before
get
your
hit all
current
at once,
military doctrine existed.
which meant the
He
chaos was
paused.
directional.
The man on the roof with the targeting system,
Which meant the
is
soldiers in the
91.
column
He fought
were
it
pushed
honestly,
inward
kept
toward
her
each
station.
other rather
that
than
engagement
outward.
ended before most of your current officers were born. He's had 70 years to get better at the things he learned there. Silence on the channel.
She would later
I
say,
see.
slower than usual
Beaumont's
because her
voice
reading
wasn't
glasses
unkind.
kept fogging
You
up.
looked at our age and saw diminishment.
The
You
scans
look at our
confirm
age
it. Hostiles
and see
inbound. Divert
practice.
power to shields.
The
Launch
Confederation
interceptors
fleet
now. Copy.
arrived
Deploying.
2 hours later.
Status
By
report!
then,
Enemy
or
positions
had already
updating.
pulled
Flight
his third
provides.
wave
Reroute to
back
Sector
to
7.
ships.
Engage
The
targets. Maximum
Confederation
firepower.
captain,
The colony is.
young,
They're firing
tight-jawed,
from multiple
clearly
vectors.
having rehearsed what she was going to say when she got here. Opened her channel
I'm counting
expecting
8,
to be
no,
negotiating
12
a hostage
distinct
situation
positions.
or surrender. Instead, Beaumont told her they needed medical
situation is
supplies,
critical. We
2
must act
structural
now.
engineers,
Every second counts.
and
Mobile
someone who
voice.
could fix the
Off-duty
water
stack.
treatment processor, which had taken
Grid
shrapnel
online.
in the
Initiating
second wave
sequence.
and was
Perimeter
filtering at
secure.
about
Monitor for
60%.
anomalies.
She stared at him from her view
Threat
screen
level
for a
rising.
long
Deploy
moment.
interceptors.
Affirmative.
Administrator,
Launching now.
how
Status
many
on Sector 4.
casualties?
Containment at
Colony
80%.
11
This is
wounded,
professional ordnance work.
3 serious.
Send the second
He
wave.
paused.
Commander,
None pretty much
send the second.
fatal. She stared a while longer.
Wave.
The veil cosmos. That's their business to report. Beaumont picked up his cane. Captain, I appreciate you coming. True, but we've got a harvest to finish and film screen to play.
Suppression
I think
fire
we'll be
before they
alright.
even hit the ground,
Dominion after action
sweeping the
report
ridge
on
lines,
Thessaly.
the
6 was
rooftops,
sealed for 6 cycles. When it was finally
burning the red
reviewed
clay
by the
into
Dominion
glass.
Strategic Council, it contained a single annotation, added by Fleet
Edna was
Commander
already gone
Orith
from the
Soule,
East Ridge.
who hadn't attached annotations to any previous report in his career.
She
The
hadn't
annotation
stayed on the
pretty
East
much
Ridge.
read, recommend immediate reclassification of all human civilian settlements, regardless of population age, mobility status, or apparent defensive capacity.
Then she'd left and she
Category
was already
one,
inside the
category
colony's service
unresolved.
tunnel system,
Rationale,
which she'd helped
standard threat assessment models evaluate
design
combat
11 years
potential
ago,
against
which connected
current
every
physical
major
capability.
structure
This
underground.
model fails honestly when applied to humans. Their capability does not reside in their bodies. It resides in what their bodies remember. We engaged, I
Infrastructure
guess,
rather than
4,000
defensive
people who had
architecture.
each, on average, survived 8 decades on a species that produces violence the way other species produce language. Constantly, fluently, and with nuance we don't
Squad,
yet
advance
fully
on the
understand.
objective. Stay
They
sharp.
weren't
Copy
fighting
that.
from
Drones
training.
have eyes on.
They were
Roger.
fighting
Move to
from
cover.
sediment. Plus,
She'd
from
been walking
everything
this tunnel
layered
for a
down in them
decade,
over a
every
lifetime.
morning.
We can't scan for that. Plus, we can't plan
Because
around
it was the
until
best
we
way to
understand
get
it.
from.
I've requested assignment to the Xenoanthropology Commission, which I believe this to be the most strategically useful deployment of my remaining career. On Thessaly 6, the tomato harvest was 2
And the
days
hill
late,
wasn't her
but
friend
otherwise
anymore.
fine. Edna Vasquez sat on her warped white fortune cube. The sky
The
going
reports confirm
orange
it.
and
Hostile
violet
signatures
over the
detected.
red clay hills.
Divert power to forward
and
shields,
drank
now.
coffee that was still terrible
She
because the supply
came up to
ship
the access
and
hatch
all the
behind the
chaos
colony's
had still
medical
not
storage
arrived.
bay.
She drank it anyway,
Currently,
on the table well.
All patients
Beside
move
her,
to Sector
her
7
tablet
shelters.
showed
Corridor
a new
clear.
summary. The Veil Cost had pulled back from 3 other outer colony
Target
positions.
acquired.
No
Scanning
engagement.
now. Lock
Just
confirmed.
withdrawal.
Prepare for engagement.
Plus,
All
as
systems
though
green.
someone had
Execute.
recalculated
entrance,
something.
and were
She
sweeping
thought
the
about
room
Franklin.
in the
He would have
confident.
found this whole thing very funny. He would have made a terrible joke. He would have been in the tunnels next to her. She knew that, right up until the end, complaining about his back the entire time.
In the Dominion
She
tactical
missed him
record,
the way you
the
miss a
Battle of
limb.
Thessaly 6
Not with
lasted
fresh
6
grief
hours and
anymore.
41
Just the
minutes.
permanent fact of the absence.
Veil Cost
the
committed
space
3
where the weight
waves.
used to be. She heard the screen door behind her. Dung came out and
This blood is fresh,
sat in the
minutes
other
old.
chair. moving
I know.
slowly,
We have to move.
making no
Now.
comment about his
Copy
knees
that.
because he'd stopped commenting on his knees
They didn't
years
take
ago.
the colony.
They sat for a while. Beaumont wants to know, he said eventually, if you'll be on the
Forrest
infrastructure
sat
review
pretty
committee.
much on
Thinks
his
kind of
bridge and
we
read
should
the reports
reinforce
as they
the
came
service
in.
tunnels. Tell him yes.
For
He
the
also
first
says the
time in
structural
11
engineers the
campaigns,
Confederation sent
11,
are 24
he felt
years
something
old
he didn't have a
and
clean word
keep
for.
asking questions. They can
Command,
ask
this is
questions.
Unit 1. Hostile
Doesn't
activity
mean
detected
leave
in
to
Sector
answer
7.
all of them.
Threat level is critical.
Daeung
Request
made a
immediate
sound
support.
That wasn't quite a laugh.
Dominion didn't have a good
Almost.
vocabulary
The
for
sun
the
went the rest of
experience
the
of
way
expecting
down.
a fruit that had
Casablanca
fallen
played in the Central Commons. The
from the
old
vine
print
and
flickering
finding
slightly,
instead something
the sound
thorned.
slightly too loud. Across the settlement, people watched it
The
way
colony's
people watch
defenders were
things they've
using
seen
mining
before.
equipment as
Not
improvised
for the
artillery.
surprise, but for the confirmation. The reassurance
The
that it
enemy is
still
advancing from the
ends
eastern
same way.
flank.
But
Deploy
something's hold.
reinforcements to
Edna
Sector
watched
B
the stars
immediately.
come out over Thessaly 6, her hands wrapped around the bad coffin. 4,000 years of practice. She supposed that was about
Half-built
right.
maintenance
3
structure
cycles
onto the
later,
flank of his
the
second wave's
Veil-Cost
armored
Dominion
unit.
requested, through a neutral intermediary,
Using what the
formal
post-analysis
dialogue with the Human Confederation regarding the outer colony territories. The request in particular included a clause asking for consultation with civilian populations,
shaking
including
badly
elder
enough
community
that the detonator
representatives.
caps had to
The
be crimped
Confederation's
3
diplomatic
times before they
office
seated.
spent 2 days trying to figure out
These supplies
what
are
had
critical.
prompted the
We distribute them
clause.
precisely.
Eventually,
Understood.
someone
What's the chain of
found the
custody?
sealed
I'll handle the
after-action
inventory.
report.
Good.
Eventually, pretty much, someone read the annotation. The consultation was granted. Well, Beaumont Achabi attended. He brought Edna Vasquez. He brought Daeung
We
Park,
can't just
who
sit
wore the
here.
uniform shirt
It's time to act.
and the medals, and said almost nothing, which turned out to be more effective than anything the professional diplomat said.
Sector 7.
The Veil-Cost delegation
Sitting on a supply
kept
crate
looking at
because
it.
the
To be
chairs were all
fair,
taken.
he let them look. 91 years of not explaining himself
that
to
stings. Make
anyone
it
had
tight.
given him a stillness
Almost done,
that
Swift.
read
Stay with me.
across species lines as something
He
the
was
Dominion
bleeding from a
language
cut
called
above his
Vether,
ear
which
where a fragment
translated
had caught him.
roughly as a depth you can't
And
see
someone
the
had
bottom
wrapped it
of.
badly
They
with
signed
whatever
a
was
provisional
available,
accord
and he
on the
looked like
4th
what he
day.
was.
Nobody from the Confederation diplomatic office
The situation
quite
is critical.
understood
Mobile
how it happened.
or its
Edna
voice through the
could have explained it. She didn't.
I wish to
which are some
understand
things you only
something.
learn by living long enough to know you don't have to explain them anymore.